Hey there, my name is ZW Buckley. I'm a composer, music producer, and Ableton certified trainer, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is going to transform how you work with velocity and MIDI. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then prepare. If you're new to the concepts that I'm covering in this video, then this is going to help you achieve a human and lively feel to your MIDI. If you do know what I'm talking about in this video, then you're just going to sit back and be like, yeah. And really the number one takeaway from this video as you watch it, that I just need you to sit with, is that velocity isn't volume. Volume is just one parameter that we can modulate with velocity. But if we start to explore modulating other parameters with velocity, then all of a sudden there is a whole world of expression that opens up to us when we're producing our music. Let's go ahead and jump right in, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. We normally think of velocity strictly as just being volume, right? It is a MIDI value that gets sent every time a MIDI note message on is triggered. And so right now I have this closed hi-hat set to 64 velocity, and everything sounds a consistent volume. And if I take the first note of each beat and crank up the velocity, we're going to hear each of those notes getting louder, which is exactly what we think of normally when we think of velocity. What I want to impart upon you is that velocity is more than volume. And so let's switch up this same example and this same paradigm. So I've got this pluck set up, and right now we have the same thing going on. Straight machine gun 16th notes, and we're playing a D minor triad here, and that sounds like this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this awesome device called expression control that just allows me to map parameters to then be modulated by specific incoming MIDI messages. And here I've got velocity selected. So this is going to be a very easy way for us to visualize modulating something else based on velocity. So I am just going to go ahead and map velocity to the decay value of my modulation envelope. And I'm going to now take those same quarter notes of the downbeat, and I'm going to 90. Let's take these remaining notes, bring them down to 25. So now we have this pretty wide velocity gap between the notes at the downbeat and all of the other notes in this pattern. And that means that expression control is going to open up the decay value of this modulation envelope more for these higher notes. It's going to make them jump out and feel accented without actually changing the volume of the notes. And so I could create an interesting pattern just by taking different notes and really cranking up the velocity. So I'm going to do that for the notes that I've highlighted here. Listen to how much more interesting that is than if I take all of these and just make them, again, 64 straight down the middle. So let's continue talking about this idea of accent. So if I just solo this drum pattern over here, this is really my accent pattern for this section. I've got my kick, rim, snare, and clap, creating this really cool syncopated pattern. And if I unsolo this, we're going to hear that everything is hitting that accent. And I'm going to pause here because we see all of these muted notes. And this is where accents come into play really nicely. This is actually an arpeggio that I've muted pretty significantly. I'm taking my instrument, the endless string, which is available on my website and my Patreon, and I'm using expression control with a bunch of modulators set to velocity, to affect the decay of the string instrument, the decay of the exciter, and then the size of the bandpass filter on the instrument. So these notes with higher velocity are just going to be fuller and more assertive. But now I'm going to highlight all of the notes and then bring them all back. And all the remaining notes are much lower velocity. We now just have a very simple, upward moving arpeggio, but it sounds so much more rich and complex because I am using velocity to really shape the tone of the instrument. And if we look down at this second example that I have here, it's the exact same thing, but now I've filled out everything else as well in this pluck. So again, this pluck has our accent pattern, but it also then is driving the groove forward with these steady, constant 16th notes. So we can really hear the accent pattern, but we have this sense of momentum, this sense of propulsion, thanks to all of the tone shaping that is going on using velocity. And if I just cut this modulation all together, it's so static. There are other ways to leverage velocity as a source of modulation to make your music feel more alive and more human. And one of those ways is through using various MIDI tools, such as deviation. And we're going to focus on what's happening here with this arp. I'm going to highlight both of these notes, and I'm going to use this deviation control to give each MIDI note permission, essentially, to deviate up to 50 velocity. So now some notes, every time they play, are going to be louder than the 25 velocity that they are set to. And that's going to change every time it repeats. I'll let this whole pattern play through twice so we can hear it. And let's talk about now another way that we can use velocity and modulation, and that is randomization. We're going to focus on what's going on with the drums here. If we mute everything up top here, there's still the same accent pattern from before of the kick, rim, snare, and clap. And then we have a pretty constant hi-hat pattern that's using both a closed pedal hi-hat and open hi-hat sample at a steady rate of 16th notes. And then everything else in between is a bunch of little random bits of percussion. Now, so far, everything that isn't the kick and snare, snare inclusive of the rim and clap here, is at a lower velocity. But we can introduce a certain degree of randomization to give a bit more life to everything here. I'm going to highlight just these hi-hats. And down here, I'm going to select randomize velocity and randomize our range based on a value of 100. So now the hi-hats have this really, really wide range to them. And for this drum kit, I have this velocity modulation value set up, which if we expand it, that is just changing the velocity modulation built into Ableton's drum sampler. And it's modulating the first effects macro for each pad of drum rack. And so in the case of the hi-hats, it's introducing a certain amount of white noise into the sound. And that takes these constant 16th note hi-hats and really makes them interesting. Let's do the same thing then here for the percussion. I'm going to highlight all of these percussive notes once more and then randomize their velocity. So now some are really loud, some are really quiet. And for all of these, they have the loop effect set up. Velocity then is controlling the offset for these loops. So I'm going to go ahead and really crank this up and make it quite obvious. So ones like this that are max velocity, that loop is so tight that it becomes pretty much tonal. But these ones like the toms that are a bit lower velocity here, they still retain the character of the sound. And if I just highlight everything and bring it all back in, we hear this really, really complex pattern emerge. And we can do this kind of randomization for other elements as well. Let's go back to that little arp part that we were playing with here, that we have, this deviation built in, but I can also still randomize and the deviation will accommodate for that. Pulling that back in with our drums here. And hear everything in this section with those changes. So as you can see, velocity is so much more than volume. It is a powerful tool that we can use to modulate and add expression to a whole host of different parts of our music. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. I'm working really hard to grow the channel to 50,000 subscribers by the end of 2026, and it is your support entirely that makes it possible. If you want to go further in helping to sustain this channel, then consider joining my Patreon. I have 2 tiers for you. My audience tier, which includes bonus videos as well as access to my Discord server, and the artist tier, which includes all of that and all of my presets, including every single sound that you heard today in this video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.